Okay, so I'd give Silent Night like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. Probably a 7 out of 10, but here's why. Although the plot for the film is very simplistic, which is something that I can appreciate, I feel like there were certain segments that could have been way more fleshed out. We have our main character who is an average Joe who loses his son to a drive-by shooting. During the drive-by shooting, he also catches a stray bullet as well and loses the ability to speak. And from here on out, it's about him getting revenge on these gang members. Honestly, I can appreciate a plot like that. I really don't need much more, but like I said, in certain segments throughout the film, you kind of miss a little bit more substance. But before we dive into it, let me tell you a little bit about the film. So it's directed by John Woo, a guy who also directed Mission Impossible 2, Hard Target, The Killer, and probably my favorite of his work, which is Face Off, and a lot more other action films I'm sure you guys have heard of. The film stars Joel Kinnaman, which you guys probably know from the RoboCop remake if you watched it, which I honestly don't think a lot of people did. It also stars Kid Cudi. For anyone who has seen my From recaps, you guys know that I'm a big fan of that show. You guys would be familiar with this face right here, Catalina Sedina Marino. This isn't a star-studded cast or anything, but for the most part, the film was decent. The title of the film, Silent Night, is actually taken quite literally throughout this film. The main character never speaks. Even before he loses his voice, you don't hear what he sounds like. And there might be a couple of words that are uttered here and there throughout the film, but nobody really says anything. Honestly, I really didn't have anything against that. I really don't need a film with a lot of dialogue as long as the visual narrative is strong enough. I do think that I can honestly say that the visual narrative was good enough, I think. After he loses his son, there's a lot of sentimental moments where he just loses it and, he's trying to cope with the fact that he just lost his son. And a lot of words aren't really needed for moments like this because, well, we understand. We may not have lost a child, but we understand the tragedy of that moment and we can sympathize with the character. Moments like these are just moments that have to exist in the film, but we're really here for the action. How was the action? Was it on point? Was the choreography good? And the answer is yes. There's a lot of great fight choreography throughout this film. The John Wick inspiration all over it. The film really embraces the modern day gore that we tend to see in action films, and I really enjoyed that factor. Now, the pacing isn't always great, so there's a lot of moments where it slows down and it feels like it gets a little too slow and they try to sympathize a little too long and you kind of lose track of where the film is. Because it's a silent film and the characters never say anything or moments of progression are never spoken upon, it's really easy to lose track of where the film is if you ever take your eyes off the screen. Because with most films, you can look away for a second and then just listen to the conversation and know where things are going. With this movie, if you miss certain moments like that, you might be a little lost. I mean, of course, the main point of the film never loses track, but just certain moments, why certain things are happening, if you look away, you'll miss it. I would say my biggest qualm with the movie is the logical factor. They did their best to try to find ways around moments like this. It's just really hard for a guy who lives a normal life to go on throughout the day and every day without saying a word. But like I said, I think the film did a really good job at finding ways around moments like these. The logic of it just bothered me sometimes, and that was probably really just my biggest qualm with the movie. I have seen some other reviews where people have said that the characters are forgettable and it's just not a memorable movie. I also think I agree with some of those things to a certain extent. It's not really a movie I'm going to think about tomorrow. I'm probably not really going to recommend it to anybody. But since there's not really much out right now, it's not the worst thing you can go watch.